Come on.
What, you wanted
Tell us
the
about your
class.
sleep trouble.
No, it's okay. You know,
This
it's
is banter, so you don't want to disclose your sleep schedule in the
It's
banter.
banter, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, let's talk about my sleep schedule, and clients will think I cannot show up for early
No,
morning
it
meetings.
means you're
I show up when you
committed.
call me.
It means you're committed. You stay
Yeah.
up the
Even
whole
when
night.
you sleep at 2 a.m. working on your
Yeah.
matter, and you'll still be there at 8 a.m. for a meeting.
Exactly.
But I'm trying to figure out a way, a rhythm that is that works for me without necessarily sticking to the conventional. You know. I think also there's a bit of when we go through school, when we go through life, your conventional is pushed through you so much that you forget to find a way that works for you. Some people would like to work in complete silence, but maybe you work in a co-working space and somehow you've been forced to make that work for you. Maybe some people can work in silence and maybe you're forced to work in a place where it's extremely quiet. So I'm also trying to figure out. I mean, it's a journey
What
of
works
figuring
for
out
you.
yourself through and through, really. It's
Interesting.
yeah.
Me, I don't know. I prefer to sleep early if I can. But when I do, I'd really try to stick to the schedule. Now I get to the point where 6 a.m. usually is when I wake up. But it will just happen. Even when I sleep late or I'm on vacation or something, I'll still find myself waking up at 6 a.m. like, bro, why are you awake? So then I have to force myself to go back to sleep. But I like having a schedule and I prefer morning hours, though I needed a coffee for this. This is a bit earlier than usual for our recording
Guys,
time.
it's just 10.
I know you've
Morning.
been up for 5 hours
I've
already.
been up since 5.
Wow.
Yes.
You've already done half a day.
Pretty much, yeah.
Almost really half a day for you.
Wow. You could have played a round of golf and
I've
made it for this.
played a round of golf, then I come here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes, so nice to be here to do another episode. So let's get to it. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Full Scale Podcast. Today, we are excited to host Meredith Muthoni, a dynamic force in the startup ecosystem with a sharp eye for what it takes to raise capital effectively. With years of experience supporting early-stage startups through their fundraising journeys, Meredith has worked closely with founders to align business and investment strategies and to avoid the most common fundraising pitfalls. She's currently the head of electric finance at Burn, one of the largest vertically integrated modern cookstove companies in the world that provides world-class research and development, manufacturing, carbon offset projects. In this episode, she opens up about our own journey raising money, what it's like supporting founders behind the scenes, and why storytelling is one of the most underrated tools in the founder's pitch arsenal. Meredith, it's a pleasure to have you feature on our podcast, and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. So perhaps we could begin with you telling us about yourself. Who is Meredith?
Yeah, sure. So Meredith Muthoni Jenga, all my names. I was born and raised in Nairobi, Kenya. Went to high school in the middle of a tea plantation in Limuru, which was nice. I studied at Strathmore University, so pretty much done all my schooling experience here. I am a solo parent to 2 girls, very energetic girls. And I've spent more than a decade of my career so far working with startups in different cycles of growth. So early stage, growth stage, helping them think through business strategies, how to fundraise, how to position themselves for investors. There have been some successes, some failures. But one thing I think that sets me apart is that in everything I do, I really put a lot of heart and energy into it and have fun along the way. And it goes to also speak to things I like doing in my free time. I like to have a good time with friends and family. I recently started playing golf. Okay, not recently. It's been 1 year. I'm just really bad. I'm so bad at it. And I hope I'll get better. And it's interesting also, that's how we also connected. And
Absolutely.
hence we are here today. So such meaningful relationships and connections is something that brings me a lot of joy.
Oh, wonderful. That's good to hear. Golf has brought us here.
I know.
Yeah.
You said you went to school in a tea plantation?
Yes.
What was that like?
It was nice. Actually, during my time there, I became quite the cross country runner.
Yeah.
Because I
Really?
usually participate in lots of cross country through the tea plantation. It was very cold. We would wear gumboots to class because your school shoes would not make it through the,
This-
the flooding.
This sounds to me like, when parents tell kids,
Yeah.
in my day when I used to go to school, I used to have to run across a plantation in gumboots.
Swim in a crocodile-infested river.
Okay, no, I didn't do any of that. I just wore gumboots to class and was a cross country champion. That's what I
Wow.
did.
But which school is this?
Amazing.
That's Loreto Limuru.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quartet, right?
Yes, correct.
Ah,
Yeah, we had
okay.
this very famous red uniform.
Yeah.
Yeah, it stood out within a crowd.
Okay.
Absolutely.
From schooling in the tea plantation, running around in gumboots, to head of electric finance. What is head of electric finance? What's that? Just to pause on
Yeah.
that.
It's an interesting title, but so the company I work for does clean cook stoves and an array of products of clean cook stoves. And what I do is I head the corporate finance and strategy function for
Okay.
the electric cooking business.
Got you.
So the only reason it has the electric finance because we do have other people on the team who have other corporate fundraising roles that are not focused on electric cooking. So since I'm the electric cooking girl, let me put it that way. Hence,
Okay.
I was like, okay, let's just throw it into the title and shock people. Literally, it's something
okay.
interesting.
It's
yeah.
a conversation starter for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. I'll get into fundraising, yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So it looks like you have quite a history in fundraising. Maybe you can tell us a bit about that and then talk about when should a startup actually fundraise? I'm sure there's a lot of myths versus realities when it comes to that space. What can you share about when exactly you should start fundraising?
Yeah, so like through my career, I've worked with so many different startups in different levels of their journey. Most of them, you'd find they feel like they always need to be fundraising, but that's really not the case. You need to fundraise when you actually have a plan and need the money. And one thing that people don't understand is why people say, oh, I spent 3 years with this investor and they finally closed the deal, or I've been talking to them for 5 years, nothing has come from it. It could be a thing of you're not aligned, or either that your plan is not discrete or very concrete on what exactly you need the money for and the why about it. So the struggle I really have with many founders is I like to call it flip-flopping. So they keep flip-flopping from idea to idea, and they don't want to stay the route long enough for it to be able to get traction, for the investor to see this someone who can actually execute on the idea and that it's fundable. So it makes it really hard to go through that journey. Another thing is I've also encountered is when people fundraise, they close the deal, there's this nice announcement, and then you think, that's it. Now I can just, chill. I have money for years. That money has milestones attached to it. Not every investor gives you everything from the first raise. If you raise like $5 million, you only get a little bit in the beginning. So it's about how do you make sure you stay the course, execute on all the milestones, so you draw down all the money. So you'd find lots of companies announce these big raises, but only utilize very small portions of the funding because they're just not able to execute and get it through the line, which also affects now future fundraising efforts that you have to make. Yeah, so I would say those are some of the main things. And one other one is key investor risk is one I've seen a lot. Where a founder hangs on to one investor and like, this is the person who's been with me from the beginning. They'll keep on refinancing, putting in more money.
Yep.
But it's a very big risk. So what if one day this person, bad case, they get sanctioned for one reason or another?
Yeah.
What happens to your business? So it's always good to make sure you diversify your channels and your investments across a wide pool. And the pool is there. They all look for different things, want to see different things, different types of security, but it's diversify your investors. Don't have one or two. Always keep it open.
Awesome. I think those are some really cool points. So fundraising, when you actually have a plan, the press release is just the beginning, not the end, right? It's not the goal. And key investor risk, which I've never heard of. Usually we think of a key person within the business, and that's the risk that the investor is looking at. But I've never thought about it from the founder's side, that, one investor being the person you're relying on or the institution could be a big risk for you. And then in terms of the types of fundraising or the type of investment you're looking for, how should I, as a founder, for example, be thinking about it? Should I be looking to sell equity? Should I try and issue debt or seek debt or grants? How do you sort of think about those different types of investments?
Yeah, it really depends on your stage the stage your business is at, and also what you want to fund. So I would say if you're really early stage, maybe you just have an idea or a concept, go for the free money. Don't start owing people debts. Try and find as much as free and friendly money as much as possible. If you're now more established, you have some revenues, you can start saying, okay, maybe I can try some short-term debt or working capital, depending on what your funding needs are. Now when you're a more established business, or you need a runway to burn some cash so you can get things running to scale, you need to start having equity discussions.
Okay.
And it's about just matching the timing of the funding with the plan and the need at the same time. Because they would find there are businesses in the growth stage, but they still write grants and they still apply for grants. But because there's certain innovations or things they're testing out or piloting, maybe new markets, and grant funding would be the best way to fund something like that.
Yeah.
You don't take debt to fund an expansion. No, that's just a bad idea, especially if it's a place you don't know about. I think one I like to give is Ethiopia, where I had a business that took debt to fund the expansion in Ethiopia. And it really didn't work out for them quite well, because the business did scale. They had to pay it back. They had to shut down. It's not a nice story. So
Got
just
you.
always make sure you match the funding, the patience of the capital to the need of the business as close as possible.
Okay.
Awesome. And within that, the different examples, I think it sounds like you've already mentioned one of them. Are there any mistakes that you see startups making often, perhaps the ones that you see more common when they're fundraising?
Mistakes, yes, definitely. One common one, other than just the mismatch in funding. I think the mismatch in funding has been the biggest one I've seen. Because many startups I've worked with, you'd find maybe they have some revenues, they really don't know how to manage debt. Let me put it that way. So you have some revenues. Banks are always willing to give you money once they see that there's money in and out of your account. So you take short-term, maybe unsecured debt to fund long-term growth plans. So yeah, maybe your revenues will be enough to pay it back, but there's this concept called the time value of money. And the more you keep on refinancing that debt, so pay it off in 3 months, take a new one, pay it off in 3 months or 6 months, take a new one, you realize you're tapping into very expensive capital. And really, if you spend some more time figuring out a plan, going and approaching maybe someone who's more patient, would give you a 5-year runway or 7-year runway, you'd find you're spending less on repaying investors and you have more money to focus on actually re-injecting into your business and growing.
Wow.
So that has been one of the biggest traps, just that mismatch and not aligning the needs with the funding source. And many people tend to fall into that trap a lot.
Wow.
Yeah, that's an interesting, and from what I'm picking from the conversation really is the need to balance the risk element and the liability element of the capital that you're fundraising. That you need to plan it around it at whatever stage you are in. Some capital will be more suited to you because perhaps the risk factor, if things go wrong, is lower. Or maybe, in terms of the liabilities, because at the very early stage, if perhaps you're going for providing equity, at the end of the day, you might find that you're a founder of owning 5% of the business. So perhaps it's a balancing act. Interesting. And maybe now we could talk about the fundraising journey. Maybe I can ask you what is your first and most memorable fundraising memory so far?
Interesting, because I think the most memorable happened to be the first one I did that was very intense. Let me put it that way. There was also a time in my life where there was a lot of newness. I was 7 months pregnant.
Oh, okay.
At that time with my firstborn, and a network of mine approached me to help her fundraise for her agri-food startup. So this was literally a business that's on paper, that was doing repurposing and repackaging of the rejects from the export market, the food rejects, into stews that you could buy from the supermarket or just even from modern trade. And the thing that made it stand out is their packaging. So they would use some special type of Tetra Pak that would increase the shelf life to almost a year. So that was the niche about it. And as I said, it was a business on paper. They had a box of prototypes that helped them tick, let's say, the proof of concept. and we would carry this box to all investment meetings. Have investors taste the stew, and they give and give us feedback. Is it nice? This is, it's solving a problem within the food chain. Making sure you're reducing waste loss. We want to set up, I think that time it was somewhere in Naivasha, wanted to set up the facility, and they wanted to raise $1 million for the pilot. Not for the business, for the pilot. $1 million.
Okay.
It was a successful raise, and one thing that made it successful was the founders already had really good relationships with key investors that they were looking to bring into the business. So there was a lot of trust. And I came in as the number cruncher, so to help this business on paper make sense in terms of numbers, and also help them present it to these investors. So sell the story about how they're going to impact the communities they're working with, about post-harvest losses and export market rejects and the tons that they lose in that sector. So I really worked with them a lot to do that. The raise didn't take long. I mean, it closed in about 6 months. So it happened also really, really fast.
Wow.
And it was an interesting time. And I guess just the trust we built, having a really good story and making sure that you communicate it as clear as possible really helped. But also could be maybe there was a pregnant lady in the room, so they couldn't say no.
They're in a hurry, they don't want to disappoint a pregnant lady.
They're like, no, we
That's
can't.
a fundraising hack.
Yeah. Perhaps that's your secret. Tag along a pregnant lady. Money comes quick in 6 months.
Yes.
$1 million, actually. That's a lot of
for
money.
a pilot.
For a pilot, that's quite an impressive run you guys made. And the funny thing is, even as you were describing the concept, it even resonates with me. If I was an investor, I probably would put money, because one of the biggest problems we have globally is wastage. Between farm and fork, we lose almost like sometimes 50 to 60% of the food harvest, either through poor harvesting techniques. After poor harvesting techniques, you go and the storage problems, maybe half the harvest goes bad, or even transportation problems before it gets to the market. By the time it gets to the market and processing, a bit of it is lost as well. So by the time it gets to your plate, we have lost almost 60% of what was initially harvested. And I think that's a serious global problem that needs to be resolved. So if I was an investor listening to your story and you're also there seated pregnant, I'll probably be, they need money and they're solving a serious problem. But besides that, what surprised you most about the process?
I think for me, it just go to show like the power of trust, because a lot of people you'll meet who want money or want to invest money in the business. It all boils down, can they trust that you will execute and that they will get their return or their payback. And I don't think this raise would have happened that quickly if these investors did not trust us. As I said, we had no facility. We didn't even have a business premise. It was literally just a business on paper. But having the trust and seeing the people who know what they're doing, they will execute. Really just give them the confidence.
Wow. Amazing. And now you, earlier on when we were having a conversation, you spoke about preparing a pitch deck and presenting it to investors. What do you think is the most underrated part of a pitch deck from your experience?
For me, it's the way you tie in all the components together to tell, exactly just how you tell the story. Because yes, you know your problem, you know your solution, you know your team, like you know all those parts. But how do you tie it up to tell a really convincing story? One example I can give is there's an organic skincare startup that I've been working with. They've been in business for maybe 3 or 4 years. And they've built really, really good quality products that help people who have skin conditions like eczema. And the first time I looked at her pitch deck, it had very many before and after photos of bad skin on one side, then flawless skin on the other. And I was like, so what are you telling them? I'm telling the investors that my products are good quality and they get the job done. So when I thought about it, we did some brainstorming, and I realized we need to rethink how we are telling this story. So yes, no one maybe may doubt that you have the good quality product. There are very many other businesses out there with good quality products. But what your product is really doing is enhancing and boosting the self-esteem and social confidence for people with skin problems.
Yeah.
And that goes a long way. So it's even about how does this me feeling much better about myself, going to me being able to be a better person in society, my mental health. And we chose to run with that story and really rejig how she's been positioning herself to investors. And now it's more relatable. It's no longer about, oh, my product uses avocado oil and this, but it's about how does it make my customers feel when after 6 months they see, wow, my skin is so much better. I can stand in a crowd and not feel like my self-esteem is not low just because of the way I look. And maybe one other example I can give is my 9 to 5, I spend raising money for cook stoves. People wonder, how do you raise money for cook stoves? It's not the most attractive thing. Do you talk about the features, the stainless steel? And I'm like, no, I don't talk about the power button or like this one. If you press this, it hits in 3 minutes. Those are just features. And any other product in China has those features. But for me, because I also spend a lot of time with customers, is now realizing and learning is what does this product do for this customer? And the stories I get from most of them is how now they have quality of life has significantly improved. Because a lot of the people that buy our cook stoves you'd find they're relying on very inefficient methods of cooking. Women spending more than 4 hours a day cooking and using like charcoal and firewood, which is really also bad for your health. So they constantly have headaches. And there's no metric out there that tracks how many headaches you have in a day and how that equates to your quality of life. But if you tell the story from that perspective, like, look, we have invented a product and a solution that's improving the quality of life of millions of women, making sure they have more time to do other things, go back to school, maybe start a business. Their health has significantly improved also for their children. And that softer, I would say you humanize the pitch. So giving it that human aspect gets people more hooked and interested rather than focusing on just like hard features of what your solution is doing.
Wow. Absolutely amazing. So I think I'm picking out 3 things really from your response. The first one was on the trust element of fundraising, that you need to be to create that sense of trust that the investor thinks that they need to give you money and it will be put into good use. The second bit was about ensuring that everything ties together, on your pitch deck. Perhaps the underrated bit is where people don't work so hard to ensure things tie together. So you have this part, but maybe they don't join together to tell a story. And that thing actually is on the storytelling. And you've already spoken a bit about storytelling, but maybe to take you down that road a little bit more, how absolutely important do you think is good storytelling to fundraising? Do you think how critical do you think is the power of storytelling in the process of fundraising?
It is. It's very, very important because you'd find there's so many very innovative businesses, but just because they're not able to communicate properly about what exactly they exist to do and how they're doing it, they lose tact. And you find people get bored or they lose focus very quickly. And, in this space where, especially in this ecosystem, there are very many accelerators, incubators, and everyone is trying to stick out. Like, I'm different because of this. You should choose me to be part of your program, choose to invest in me. But how you tell your story is what's going to get you there. You'd find some of the ones that really make it ahead don't even have the most innovative thing, but it's just how they've packaged and told that story is what gets them apart. Because going back to organic skincare is not new. Like even I'm sure your moms have their own hacks on how to continue to look young. Turmeric, I don't know, banana peels. I see all sorts of things.
Yeah, they find them on TikTok
new.
now. Yeah, they send you.
It's not new. So you just need to find what really stands out and how you can weave that in. And a lot of it is, as an entrepreneur and founder, spending time with your customers. Because sometimes you think they're using your product for one thing, but actually they're using it for a whole other different business case that you didn't think about.
The story of Aramis, right?
Aramis, yeah. And maybe one
Yeah.
closer to home, because I spend so much time in that company for cook stoves. Like, we find a lot of people, instead of using our product to cook at home, because it's portable, women will carry the stove to work. So like this woman probably has like a salon or like maybe a kibanda somewhere where they sell clothes or whatever. So they'll carry it to work and cook at the business premise. So they don't have to buy lunch anymore. And that's not a use case we thought of. We could have increased the weight of the product or the size so that it's no longer portable. But when I realized actually people like the portability of this thing, we need to keep it. But it didn't stand out from the beginning.
Wow. And that makes like another selling point, right? Or
Exactly.
some part of the story. You can actually take this with you
You can
on the
take
go.
this with you, cook your dinner while you're serving your customers, and then just carry food home. You don't have to cook again. Yeah.
Really cool. A lot of gems there, and a lot of
Yeah.
I'm learning about specifically storytelling and showing your customer what they could be with this product, as opposed to telling them about the features and all these things. Amazing. Maybe just in terms of, let's say I'm listening to this or I'm watching this, I'm a founder, I'm now thinking about fundraising, and I've learned so much from this segment, trust, storytelling, etc. Now, let's say I do want to go out and start reaching out to my investors. How should I prepare for that in the most practical way possible? Like, if do you have any steps that people should go through before they actually reach out to investors, just practical ways to prepare for that process?
Yes. Step 1, know what you want and why you want it.
Okay.
Because this flip-flopping, changing your idea mid-tact, really hurts your credibility as a founder, and also compromises on the trust element. So I always tell people, this is not a situationship where you will like, let's see how this goes, keep it light and dandy. No, know what you want.
Yeah.
And first, when you know what you want, now you can come up with your plan. Make sure you have like business model and projections that back whatever that plan is. Set up now all the other nitty-gritties like a data room. Start shortlisting who you think you'd want to talk to, or if you need a consultant or an expert, get them in the door to help you through that process. But trust me, if you don't know what you want and why you want it, it's going to be a very painful process. Because you'll think, no one wants to listen to me. It's taking too long. You'll fire and hire very many consultants through the process. But then you find out you're the problem. It's not them. It's because you keep changing your mind all the time on exactly why you need to raise money. And then there's also these startups that are constantly fundraising. And for me, that tends to be kind of like a red flag, because I'm like, why do you always need money? It's are you a pyramid scheme? That's just taking money to pay others back. No, guys, I'm being serious. You're laughing, but that just comes to my mind.
That's our thumbnail. Are you a pyramid
Are you a
scheme?
pyramid scheme?
It's a serious thing. It is, yeah.
You mentioned fundraiser took like 6 months. Is that typical? How long should a founder expect the fundraising process to take?
Well, it can take as long. It can take very long. Depends on the investor. Depends on your relationship. How quickly you can put all the requirements that this person needs together. I've seen deals done in 3 to 6 months. There's one very painful one that I did. Started in February 2002. We did the due diligence, we got the term sheet signed, board approval by July 2022. Like that whole process in 4 months. Contracting. Let me ask you guys to guess. How long do you think contracting took?
Contract. What type of contracting was this? Like
So like a
just
financial
hammering out the deal?
agreement. No, a financial agreement that where you're crossing out all commercial arrangements, and lawyers were involved.
I mean, if everything is moving well, and depending on the complexity of the document, it could take about a month and a half. Ideally, if everything is moving well and everyone is doing their work, clients are reviewing documents when they need, they're agreeing on the key commercial terms as soon as possible. Yeah, but tell us, how long did that take?
It took 2 years.
Oh,
It took 2 years.
wow.
To get a contract signed.
There's
Are you
one
drafting it
single
in
contract.
Latin or what?
No, it wasn't even drafted in Latin. No, not even in Swahili. I think
Yeah.
it should be easier even if you wrote it in Swahili.
Yeah.
But that's not the case. But for me, the lesson I learned there just about, again, boils down to relationships. So the relationship with the lawyers and the team was not very warm. So they would always go back and forth around very petty points that we had already agreed on. And I think if you just manage also the relationship with everyone you're working with at that time very well, it goes a long way. Like fundraising is a people business. It's about people are the ones making this decision. There's no algorithm that you'll run. And maybe there's some startups, some accelerators that have algorithms to vet who gets in and who doesn't.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's that interview, it's that relationship you build. So just about managing that relationship. So as long as you manage it well across all the stakeholders, the lawyers, the people doing the due diligence, the analysts, the directors, or whoever you're working with on the investor side, you find it can be a very smooth and easy process.
Gotcha.
But the minute there's any breakage there, you'll be like me who spent 2 years doing a deal.
Wow, Pole.
Wow. You're empathizing. You're like, hey, that's so sad, man.
I
Sorry.
really feel for you.
I blame the lawyers, but maybe not be too harsh.
No, it's never the lawyer's fault.
Okay.
Quick one. You mentioned someone constantly being in fundraising mode as potentially a red flag. Are there any other red flags, say from an investor's perspective? What red flags should they be looking out for in startups that are seeking funds?
Yeah, I mean, anything that makes you doubt, or I would say it always goes, I'm only going back to trust, the doubt that this person can be trustworthy.
Okay.
So, the investors do talk to each other. So if you mess yourself up with one, they'll probably know and they'll blacklist you like, hey, this guy, don't invest. Like he has a track record of overpromising and not delivering at all. Another red flag I would say is high turnover in your team, especially in your core team. Like if you keep changing very key people who are like for the success of the execution of this plan, keep leaving and joining, or it's always vacant. That shows that there might be something wrong within just managing the people within that business. People go a long way in making sure that plans get executed. So if you're not managing them well, I doubt that you can be able to do it and pay back the investor. So I'd say that's also another major red flag.
Wow. Okay. And are there any sort of unexpected things that you've learned along this journey, working with founders or investors, or things that people wouldn't expect?
Things that people wouldn't expect. I think the way I would frame it is, the thing I hear a lot is from investors and also from entrepreneurs themselves is they like to romanticize this hustle and hardship of fundraising or going through that process or even just running your business.
Yeah.
And I think the most successful people are people who have balance. It doesn't have to be that you ate githeri for 3 months just to make sure you close the deal or this happened. It doesn't have to be an extremity in all cases.
Yeah.
So I would say when I hear those types of stories, even people put them in their pitch decks, I'm like, why is this even here? It has nothing to do with the problem you're solving.
Yeah.
The way that you've starved yourself for years just to make sure that you've reached here, or the amount of sweat equity you've put in. It doesn't have to be hardship. It can be just a story of balance. And the more balanced you are, you're able to present yourself in a much better light. You look like you're a stable, as you like to say, he's a solid guy. You look like you're a solid guy. You
Classic
look like you're a
term.
solid guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you have said in that process, so it sounds like you think of fundraising perhaps more of a process. I guess the question I had for you was, is it an ongoing process? Is it something that you should constantly be thinking about? Or is it sort of an event that happens and then, that's in the rear view mirror, we're now on to other things? How do you think about it?
No, it's a process, and it's just getting the investor interested, going through that due diligence, contracting is just part of the process. The real work begins once they start giving you the money, because
Gotcha.
you need to execute. And if you don't do it well, it will affect your future fundraisers significantly.
Gotcha.
So don't look at it as an event. I've done it, sealed the deal. I can go now to my beach house and work from there. No, you need to deliver.
So it goes back to, it's not the press release, right?
Yeah,
That's just the beginning of the process.
It's just the beginning of the process.
Awesome.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, lovely gems, by the way. Here, just nodding. So now, let me ask you something. Last year and perhaps beginning of this year, a lot of people in the startup ecosystem, when you have a conversation with them, everybody will say there's a funding winter in the African continent. There's funding winter. It's hard to get money. Do you think we are out of the funding winter or we're not?
Yeah, it's been a drought, not even winter.
Oh,
I call
really?
it a drought.
It's a drought,
It's dry.
It's been that bad.
It's been hard. And I think it's because a lot of the investors in this space follow trends, sadly so. So I remember during COVID time, logistics was like the best thing that everyone was really chasing to put money on. I may be biased, maybe right now I think it's maybe food and climate related stuff. That's the hot topic. So you find you have a really good idea, might not be in climate or food, but just because everyone is focusing their lens there, you feel like you're really missing out on buckets of funding. And one thing I've also seen is a lot of traditional lenders, so like the banks and more development-oriented organizations, are really rethinking how they go about their funding, which is a positive. I think they finally realized if you want to fund businesses in Africa, you need to think differently and more creatively about the structures. So like I've seen revenue-based lending models come up, which are really good, especially because most people are not profitable for a couple of years. So having a structure that's focused just on, okay, how can we get a chunk of your revenue to pay us back does help.
Yeah.
I've seen blended structures come up. Blended, I mean, where you're mixing commercial capital with free money. So like a grant and a loan attached together. So part of the facility, or maybe half or 30% of it, is grant-like, and the other is debt-like. So it at least gives you that runway to access cheaper capital and at the same time have more patient money in the whole portfolio. And on the grant space, a lot of reimbursable grants seem to be coming up, which is a good thing because a lot of people tend to misuse free money. So put in some hard line like, hey, you need to pay us back in 5 years. Make sure that the ideas that come through that or businesses that are able to access that money have more pressure to perform.
Absolutely.
And also, you as the person giving out the grant, at least there's a model for you to always reinvest back in other businesses once you get the money back. So even if it's been dry, a drought, I'm happy that people are beginning to think differently. It's still not a perfect world, but I think we'll get there. Okay, not too perfect, but we'll get there.
Yeah. You know, the second part of my question was going to be whether there have been any upsides from the drought, as you like to call it. But I think you've already spoken to that, innovative funding models coming up and all that. I think that's a good upside. And now going into the emerging strengths and the ecosystem gaps in the funding space for startups. So first of all, what are the emerging trends in the startup ecosystem that make you quite excited? What are you most excited about?
I think for me, it's seeing a lot of the innovation, especially on the financing side, and investors changing the way they are looking at businesses. That's been the most exciting. And one thing I've also learned in these 10 years, you'd think investors know exactly what they want. They have a checklist. Like, they know how tall you need to be, your size. But at the end of the day, if the story is convincing enough, you don't have to really tick all those boxes. It just needs to be about you're solving a real problem and your solution is sound, and you are the guy, the solid guy to execute and get it done and delivered.
Wow.
So people they are more willing to listen to different ideas. I've also seen in my private experience with startups I've worked with where the investors is like, no, we only do traditional lending in this way. It has to be this format. But just with engagement, they're able to think out of the box and like, what if instead we get a third-party guarantee? Or what if instead of a guarantee, we raise some equity to match at least 10% of the debt you're going to put into the business? Would you consider that something more palatable? And you find they listen and be like, actually, yeah, that can work. But you won't find that on their website. It just comes out through the conversation and engagements that you have with them.
Okay. So in short, just shoot your shot, huh?
Yeah, shoot your shot.
Wow.
Okay. And what are your thoughts on? I know you've already spoken on, about it a little bit, but what are your thoughts on alternative funding models, such as revenue-based financing, crowdfunding? Do you think there are parts a key part of the solutions for fundraising for startups going forward, currently and going forward? What are your thoughts on that?
I think they play a very big part in that they tend to be unique and more patient.
Yeah.
Especially if startups need more patient money. That's the way I like to put it. And I have a strong preference for always finding a different way of raising money for a business and not following like what's already out there. So even when at the beginning I said, as the founder, you need to know what you want and why you want it. Know what you're willing to compromise on. So a lot of these innovative models come from that compromise. You and the investor sit at the table and say, okay, I'll compromise on this. Don't give me equity. I'll give you a grant instead to help you through maybe this first phase. Another one that also people don't appreciate enough is, I think maybe it's also being misused, is this thing called technical assistance, where they help hire experts to help you on a certain area of your business. If it's used the right way, it can add a lot of value. But I think people see it as like, oh, you're just going to bring some top shot consultant who'll tell me I've been doing my whole life. Sorry, what language? I've been doing a lot of nonsense through this business.
Yeah.
But if you use it well, it can add immense value. So sometimes it's not about, oh, I've raised equity, or I've gotten millions of dollars of debt. But think about these alternative things you can do. If you can get technical assistance to solve one thing you've really struggled to do, it will create immense value for your business. If you can look for crowdfunding platforms that work, I'm yet to find one that works effectively. Like I've struggled with crowdfunding. I think it's more of a concept for like the West. I'm yet to find something that actually works for this African space.
Yeah.
But if you can put yourself out there and raise the money, go for it. It can even be maybe you find another founder who's doing something along your value chain and you decide to partner up and bring your resources together. Go for it. It's not always about there has to be an investor and a contract. There are always other ways to make sure that there's that continuity in business.
Wow.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah. I really like that, especially sort of thinking about it almost like first principles, right? Like how should I go about this? What am I actually looking for? What do I actually need? And not just thinking about what's already out there and how do people do it or how do people typically fundraise. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
I was going to move to the next one, but do you have something you want to...
No. It's just a realization from our conversation that indeed funding and fundraising is dynamic and you don't have to stick to the traditional. You need to always be thinking about what you really want to achieve and how you can achieve that. But my question is, do you feel like investors have a bit of inertia in moving to more innovative ways of financing, or how do you think they're likely to be more receptive, or this wheel moves a little slowly into more non-traditional modes of funding?
It depends on the investor. So I've seen like maybe like banks still tend to stick to more traditional ways. But if you look at the more PE or funds, there are very many different funds these days. It's getting unique. They tend to think differently and are open to considering the ideas. And I don't think it's anything unique about the entity itself changing, but it's more about the people in that entity are looking at business differently. So it's no longer, not that I have anything against boomers, but it's no longer that the boomers are making the decisions, but it's like a much younger workforce who are thinking differently about how can we go about helping businesses grow and scale. So they're willing to think out of the box and really pitch. Like I've been with investors where I didn't have much to compromise on the table. So I literally told them honestly, like, if this structure doesn't work, I'm so sad, but we might have to part ways. And they became my biggest advocates to their board until their board or their investment committee thought that I probably paid them on the side. They sold it. They really, really sold it. But it's because the people you're working with are also, they see the challenges and are thinking differently about it.
Yeah. Wow.
Interesting.
I think it speaks again to the importance of the relationships in this
Absolutely.
journey. So you're a subscriber of the show, which thank you for that. By the way, guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, all that jazz. Oh yeah, we're
Yeah.
actually supposed to do more of that. So
Yeah.
guys, I'm taking a moment to say, please
Yeah.
subscribe. So many people watch these episodes and listen and don't subscribe. Please subscribe. It really helps us out a lot. Gets us amazing guests like Meredith. So please share, like, subscribe, all that. That's our call to action. Okay. So as a subscriber, you're familiar with this question, I'm sure. But I'll ask it anyway. The question is, the premise is we're putting together a time capsule for the founders of the future. So 40, 50, 60 years from now, we have that next generation that's going to come. They'll be calling you a boomer and saying, wow, I can't believe that's how they used to think. But if you could say one thing to that generation, if we were to put you in a stage and transport you to the future and you're talking to them and you could say just one thing to them, what would that one thing be?
I think it tends to be my mantra. I always tell people, under promise and over deliver. Like it goes a long way in making sure that you maintain trust in your relationships. And it's not about just under promising and doing enough. You need to go above and beyond. And it really helps. Like one problem I also see is, startups, these founders, they have beautiful dreams, their visions, their ambition. So you start out the conversation with financial projections for the year and everything is like, it's gonna be glory and dandy. The conversation takes more time. You reach month 9 and the investor asks, so could we see your forecast versus the actuals? And then their worlds apart. And then you're like, so how do I, you start looking for stories to justify why. And they always say, oh, it's because you didn't give us the funding. That's why we didn't meet the numbers. But that's not the case. But if you are more real, you can promise, but under promise a little bit. But if you are more real with your numbers, more true to yourself, don't lie to yourself, more true to yourself. And they do appreciate realistic people. They appreciate real numbers, actually. You'd find achieving what you needed to do will work out. So it would be a case of you said you'll do this and you went above and beyond and even did more. Yeah. So always under promise, but over deliver.
Awesome.
Oh.
Thank you.
That's a smart advice. Yeah, again, like Adriana said, I'm sure you've watched, you've listened to a couple of episodes. We usually ask a surprise question.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, and I decide not to ask the one that we've been asking most. I think we said last time.
Come prepared for that one.
Yeah, we said last time if we keep asking, everybody will be so ready and it will not be a surprise. But for you today, the question is, what's the worst pitch deck you've ever seen? Anonymously, what do you think is the worst pitch deck you've seen in your journey?
The worst pitch deck I've seen, nothing, I don't have anything against slides. Slides are free, but I mean, it had an insane number of slides, a lot of content. It was like maybe a 50-page document plus. Wow. And then the story was all over the place. So it started with, hi, I'm this amazing person. I've done all these amazing things in my life. So the founder was really like selling themselves. Then after that went to, this is the problem that I'm solving for. The solution was feature focused. The projections were not grounded. You know how they like to do this thing called market sizing? So you could poke a lot of holes into how this person sized that market. Because literally you could see they just picked numbers that worked for them, ignoring that one, you have competition. Also, there was no competition.
No market comps, nothing.
No.
Utopian world.
You're the unicorn.
Okay.
The unicorn. And I think it goes to show, sometimes, yes, you have that overconfidence, which works. Like, you need to be confident through this journey. But at the same time, I'll go back to just tell your story. And tell your story. Let it be a human story. Let it be focused on the value you bring to your customers.
Yeah.
And not about you. One needs to be focused about you is that they need to know that you're the solid guy. I'm going to use that a lot. Who's going to execute and get this done.
Yeah.
But yeah, humanize and tell your story. If it's all over the place, I don't want to be there trying to solve your puzzle. It looked like a puzzle to me. I didn't know where to really place anything.
Wow. Interesting. You know, you make me think I should probably trademark that.
Yeah, I think you should.
Mukiti advocates.
Yeah, I'm a
That's
solid
Solid
guy. Okay, very, very interesting. And tell us something interesting that you've learned or discovered this week.
Interesting this week. Wow, maybe you guys go first. I need to think through it.
We don't
Now
even
it's
come
my turn.
prepared with interesting things on
That's
the
my turn
weekend.
to push back.
Yeah. But
I have a random one.
yeah, sure.
You know Mr. Beast, the YouTube guy?
Yeah.
I recently discovered that he has these chocolates that he sells, or he has a chocolate empire now called Feastables. And I never really understood it because he does all this YouTube stuff, he makes all this money. So then I was like, why chocolate? It's so random. But anyway, the reason he did it was he was interested in chocolate, but then he found out that a lot of the labor that produces cocoa in Western Africa is like child labor, basically. So his whole mission with this chocolate bar is to liberate those children so that they are no longer basically doing this work. So he created a whole new value chain for the chocolate. Like he went to big chocolate and he asked them, how do you guys do it? Because this is the business I'm trying to start. And they all told him about this, child labor thing. And he said, is there no way to do this without child labor? And they said, no, there's no way to do this. So he's basically doing this as a way to demonstrate that there is a way to do this that's sustainable and doesn't include child labor. To then show Big Chocolate that what you guys are doing is just immoral. You just want the profits and you don't want any of the responsibility. So I found that very interesting. And so, I mean, for whatever you think about him, I just thought it's a different side of him that I'd never seen. And I just found that really interesting. So, yeah.
Wow. Amazing. An interesting.
So, Mr. Beast, very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's similar to that. But I'll give my interesting thing. But I saw a story about, I think, a lady who, maybe a director or someone at Nestle, who put up a whole projector screen, like billboard, showing the negative effects of child labor in their value chain to try and educate all Nestle employees about it. I don't know if it's true. You know, these things that just pop up on social media. But it was like a story about a lady who did that. But anyway, my interesting thing is, I don't know, I like to go for very interesting events. And recently I attended horse racing. I don't know if any of you have ever gone to the Derby. You're not sophisticated enough. Yeah, where you guys play golf all the time.
No, I haven't. I've never been to any horse racing event. Have you?
No.
Yeah, maybe you can tag us along next time.
Yeah, definitely. And one, it was very inexpensive. So I was pleasantly surprised because, you think horses, you think, damn, this is going to cost a lot of money. It was very inexpensive to attend. And it was the most demure, chill crowd I have seen in my life.
Wow.
Like very... what can I say? They had a lot of...
Very thoughtful, yeah?
Very thoughtful, very kind. Everyone was seated when they needed to be seated. Before they start, there was pure silence. Like pure silence. And once, they clap their hands. I don't know what happens. But the horses start running out. That's when people become a bit vulgar. So it was a very interesting event. And a lot of, startups were also setting up shop in a sort of food market at the side. So you could also taste different types of honeys, jams, food. So it's also really a nice space for businesses to showcase their products. And then the generation mix is what surprised me the most because it was all spectrums. You'd find a crowd of Gen Zs and then even Gen X and boomers who are now the ones betting on the horses. So they would do the betting and then I'd consider myself, we were part of the riffraff, just making the noise.
Yeah.
But it was a nice event. You should consider going.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. I mean, it truly is an interesting thing of the week. It makes me curious now about watching horse racing.
Yeah, because you usually see them one or two of them running around while we're playing golf.
You should look for the next derby and just take yourself there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should I put my money on any horse?
I don't know. If you lose, don't come for me.
You have to be a solid guy. Don't be there betting on horses.
If you put your money there, be willing to lose the money and not feel bad about it.
Not a smart way to invest money, right?
Gambling. It's a gamble.
Okay.
Do you have an interesting thing?
No, for me, I can't think of any. My week is so fast. I can't think of any.
It's okay.
Feel like I'm under pressure to...
No, she's the one who brought the pressure.
Yeah.
Okay, And I mean, I think that's really us for the episode. Big thank you, Meredith, for coming on. We really appreciate it. We've learned a lot, honestly, from this conversation. One last one, I guess, for you is if our viewers or listeners wanted to connect with you or Burn or understand the work that you're doing, where should they find you online on social media or?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn, I'm very active on LinkedIn. So
Okay.
you can just search up the name Meredith Muthoni Jenga. You'll see this face.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's been us for the week. Again, call to action, guys. Like, subscribe, share the videos, share the audios. And yeah, let's just continue growing this community of people who care about startups and in the investment ecosystem. And yeah, check us out in another 2 weeks. We'll be back with another episode. Big thank you to Meredith. Thank you, Tim, as always.
Yeah.
And we'll see you guys soon. That's us for this episode. Thanks.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.